I hired an electrician while my wife was overseas, and he called trembling from the attic, saying he found a hidden safe in the insulation. I didn't know about it, but the photo he sent made me call the police immediately when we saw what was inside. The grinder screamed through metal, sending sparks across the attic floor. I stood there frozen, watching the smoke curl up from the green steel box wedged between the beams. The electrician, Earl Donovan, a quiet man with sunburned skin and cracked hands, was the one holding the tool. "Mr. Lang," he shouted over the noise, "you might want to see this." When the last slice of metal gave way, the door fell open with a dull clang. Inside were files, hundreds of them, stacks of IDs, insurance papers, and envelopes full of photos. Earl stepped back, muttering a quiet prayer. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. The attic smelled of dust and something burnt. My pulse hammered as I picked up one of the folders. Inside was a life insurance policy for someone named Cliff Morgan. Status: deceased. Payout confirmed. Attached was a photo of a man clearly alive, standing next to a palm tree, smiling. There were more: car crashes, fires, drownings, each with a payout, each with photos that said these people never really died. Then I found the journal, leather-bound, pages yellowed but written in a neat, steady hand. I flipped it open. June 2020, JB arranged the warehouse fire. MH confirmed ID switch. RL recruited the mark. I froze. JB, MH, RL. My wife's initials, Rachel Lang. The next line made my stomach twist. Next target, Ryan Lang. Project code, Foundation. Estimated payout, $2.3 million. Timeline, spring 2025. That was me. I must have stood there for a full minute before Earl spoke again. "Sir, what's going on?" My voice came out rough. "I think my wife's planning to kill me." I closed the journal and took a shaky breath. Rachel was in Paris on a 2-week art residency. At least that's what she told me. But this journal said otherwise. It said my marriage, my home, my whole life had been one long setup. The worst part? I believed it. When I finally came down from the attic, I didn't call 911. I didn't even tell Earl what I'd read. I told him to keep quiet, to tell the cops only that we found old papers. He looked at me like he wanted to argue, then nodded slowly. Once he left, I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by proof that the woman I loved had built her life around my death. I'd spent 15 years fighting my way up from foster homes and halfway houses, finally building something solid. A business, a marriage, a future, and she was going to erase it all. I poured a glass of whiskey, staring out the window at the November rain. Every drop hit the glass like a countdown. I thought about calling the cops, about handing everything over. But I knew how people like Rachel and her brother worked. Money, lawyers, charm. They'd slither out of it like nothing happened. No, if she planned to bury me, I'd make sure I was the one holding the shovel. And that's when the doorbell rang. It was almost midnight. When I opened the door, I froze. Standing there, soaked from the rain, was Rachel. "Surprise," she said softly. My trip ended early. The journal was still open upstairs. And I knew right then that my life was hanging by a single lie. I met Rachel Monroe in the most ordinary way, at a fundraiser I didn't even want to attend. It was one of those downtown Denver charity events with overpriced wine, bad jazz, and too many people pretending to care about architecture scholarships. I donated a project design to their auction just to keep my firm's name in the mix. Rachel was there photographing the event. Or at least that's what she said. She was wearing a red silk dress that looked out of place among the bland corporate crowd. Her laugh carried across the room. Low, confident, magnetic. When our eyes met, she smiled like she already knew me. We talked for hours that night. She said she worked as a freelance photographer, mostly travel and art commissions. She told me she'd just gotten back from Lisbon. I told her about my firm, the late nights, the stress, the endless chase for stability. She said something I never forgot. "You don't want stability. You want permanence. They're not the same thing." I didn't realize it then, but that was her first test. Within months, she'd moved into my apartment. Within a year, we were married. I was 35. She was 29. My friends said I was lucky. She was beautiful, sharp, warm. My mom's old friend even called her a godsend. But there were little things that didn't fit. She never let me meet her family in any real way. Her brother, Julian, called occasionally, always on speakerphone, always cutting the conversation short. When I asked about her parents, she'd say they were private people or not worth talking about. Still, I brushed it off. I wanted to believe her. I'd spent my whole life building something out of nothing. Foster homes, college on loans and grit, starting my firm with borrowed tools and a rented basement. When Rachel came along, I thought maybe I'd finally found someone who saw me, not my past. When her great-aunt Evelyn passed and left her the old house in North Denver, the one we're in now, she insisted we move in. I was hesitant. The place was huge, creaky, and too full of old memories that weren't mine. But she said it was heritage. And besides, free property was free property. The first few months there were normal or what I thought was normal. But then weird things started happening. One morning, I found a business card wedged behind the bathroom mirror. Monroe and Hale Financial Consulting. No address, just a number. When I asked Rachel about it, she said it was from a client she used to photograph. Another time, I saw her in the backyard late at night, talking on her phone in hushed tones. She said it was Julian. She started pushing me to increase my life insurance. Said it was smart business planning, since my firm was growing. I did it. I didn't think twice. When Evelyn's lawyer came by with the deed transfer, I noticed Rachel seemed unusually tense. I chalked it up to paperwork stress. But now, after reading that journal, I knew better. That house was never meant to be a home. It was bait. She'd played me perfectly. Even the little moments, the way she'd ask about my inspection routines, which sites I visited alone, what security systems I used for remote projects, those weren't curiosity. Those were reconnaissance questions. She'd spent 5 years studying me. Every habit, every weakness. I guess I was easy to read. A foster kid who'd finally built a life worth losing. That's the kind of target her brother Julian would have loved. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces clicked. Her freelance photography was a front. Her brother's consulting firm was the same name written in that journal, Monroe and Hale, M.H. And now I was sitting in that same house, waiting for a woman who might be here to finish the job early. When she walked in, dripping from the rain, she looked exactly like the woman I'd fallen for. But her eyes, they were different, cold, calculating. And as she leaned in to kiss me, I smelled the faint trace of jet fuel on her coat. Like she hadn't just come from Paris. She'd come from somewhere much closer. I poured Rachel a glass of wine while my heart hammered like a trapped animal. The journal was still upstairs in the attic, half open, sitting next to the grinder that had sliced open my world. She was sitting at the counter, drying her hair with a towel, talking about Paris like she'd really been there, describing cafes and art exhibits in that effortless way she always did, vivid, believable, natural. But every word felt rehearsed. I asked, "So, how was the flight?" She hesitated just long enough for me to notice. "Fine. Long." She didn't say the airline, didn't mention her seat or when she landed. She was careful, too careful. I smiled like nothing was wrong. I'd learned how to fake calm in foster homes, when your safety depended on acting normal while you were terrified inside. I used the same skill now. That night, when she went to shower, I slipped out back and called Earl. "Did you tell anyone about the safe?" I whispered. "No, sir," he said, his voice uneasy. "But you might want to know I saw a car earlier. Parked near your house. Black Tahoe. Tinted windows. Been there twice since I left." I looked toward the street. Nothing there now, but I believed him. I'd seen that car before. Once, 2 weeks ago, when I was locking up my office late at night. I thought it was coincidence. Now I wasn't so sure. When I came back inside, Rachel was sitting on the bed in her robe, scrolling through her phone. "You okay?" she asked, eyes flicking up. "Yeah." I lied. "Just locking up." She smiled. "You're so careful. That's one of the things I love about you." The irony almost made me laugh. Over the next few days, I played along. I kissed her in the mornings, cooked dinner with her at night, acted like the man she thought I was. Oblivious. But every spare minute I was digging. I searched the house. Every drawer, every vent, every loose floorboard. In the basement, behind the old furnace, I found a hidden panel with a burned cell phone and a stack of prepaid debit cards. In the bedroom closet, inside a shoebox marked Photos, I found a flash drive labeled Foundations. When I opened it on my laptop, my blood ran cold. It contained floor plans of my company's current projects. Ones I designed but never shared with anyone outside my office. They were annotated with notes like, weak joint, perfect entry point, and inspection route confirmed. Whoever made those notes had been planning a fatal accident. One file was titled Blueprint Final. RL confirmed. RL. Rachel Lang. She'd already approved my death. That night I couldn't sleep. She was next to me, her breathing slow and even, and I just lay there staring at the ceiling, realizing I'd married a predator. But I wasn't just prey anymore. The next morning, I went into my office early and called in a favor from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. An old friend from college, Evan Cortez, now an investigative journalist for a national outlet. Evan, I've got something, I said. Something huge. But I can't hand it to the cops yet. He asked what it was. Insurance fraud, identity theft, murder for profit, and I think my wife's part of it. He was silent for a moment. Ryan, are you safe? Not yet, but I will be. We made a deal. I'd give him proof when I had it, but until then, he'd keep quiet. When I got home that night, Rachel was waiting on the porch, looking anxious. Julian called, she said. He wants to talk to you. He's worried about you being in that house with all the old wiring and… Why would he care about that? I interrupted. Her eyes flickered. Because he likes you. I smiled, even though my skin crawled. Then tell him I'll see him tomorrow. She blinked. Tomorrow? Yeah, I said. Tell him to meet me at the old project site on Federal Avenue. Noon. It was a lie. I just wanted to see how fast the trap would close. And it did, faster than I expected. At 11:03 the next morning, before I even left the house, a message came from an unknown number. Don't go to the site, Ryan. Come to Union Station. 12:30. Alone. J.M. Julian Monroe. He wasn't waiting for me at the site. He was waiting for me somewhere public. And that meant he already knew I knew. Union Station was crowded, humming with people and the sound of rolling suitcases. I got there early, found a corner seat facing the main entrance, and waited. My phone was in my pocket, recording. Every instinct told me I shouldn't have come, but I needed answers. At 12:37, Julian Monroe walked in. Tall, late 30s, expensively dressed, the kind of man who always looked like he owned the room. I'd seen him maybe 3 times before. At our wedding, at Christmas, and once when he borrowed my car for a business trip and returned it smelling like cigarettes and money. When he spotted me, he smiled that politician's smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ryan, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. You look like hell. Guess I've had a long week. He waved at a barista. 2 coffees. Black. Then he leaned forward. You found the safe. I didn't react. What makes you say that? He chuckled. Because you're still alive. That means you know something. I kept my tone flat. So what's your plan now, Julian? Threaten me? Finish what you started. He tilted his head. You think I'm the one trying to kill you? I stared at him. The journal said. I know what the journal said. He cut in sharply. And you really think I wrote those entries? That I'm running this whole thing? That's what it looks like. He sat back, a slow smile spreading across his face. Then you really don't know your wife. For a second, I didn't breathe. What does that mean? Julian's voice dropped low. It means Rachel isn't who you think she is. She's not the follower. She's the architect. I just work for her. I laughed, but it came out shaky. You expect me to believe that? Believe what you want, he said, sipping his coffee. You think she needed me to set you up? She found you, Ryan. She studied you. The journal, the files, the photos, those were her projects. Evelyn's house wasn't an inheritance. It was her lab. She learned insurance fraud from our father before he died. But she took it further. Identity theft, offshore transfers, everything. The people you saw in those files. She picked them, groomed them, erased them. I felt my throat tighten. You're lying. Julian leaned in closer, his expression cold and tired. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. Rachel told me to meet you because she's cleaning house. You're not supposed to be part of this anymore. She doesn't need me either. I'm disposable. We all are. For a moment, all the noise around us, the station announcements, the chatter, faded into a single pulse of dread. He reached into his coat pocket and slid a folded paper across the table. I hesitated before opening it. It was a photocopy of a bank transfer. Offshore account. $2.3 million. Recipient. Rachel Lang. Transfer date. Yesterday. She's already cashed out, Julian said. You were the last piece. The tragic husband payout was just the endgame. She was supposed to disappear next month. I felt the world tilt. So why tell me this? He gave a bitter smile. Because she tried to cut me out too. She transferred my share into a closed account. You think I care about you? I don't. I just want her to burn first. He stood up, dropping his untouched coffee on the table. Check your phone when you get home, he said. She's already rewritten your insurance policy. You signed it 3 weeks ago, remember? The one she emailed from the firm's lawyer? That signature isn't yours. She forged it. Then he leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. You want revenge, Ryan? Don't go to the cops. She's 2 steps ahead of them. You want to win? Follow the money. And when you find where it ends, you'll find her. He turned to leave, but I grabbed his arm. Where's she going? Julian smiled like a man already halfway gone. Check her passport drawer. Then he walked out into the crowd, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I realized I wasn't just being hunted. I was being erased. When I got home, Rachel wasn't there. Her car was gone. I ran upstairs, tore through the dresser, and found the drawer Julian mentioned. Inside, beneath a layer of clothes, was a second passport. Not Rachel Lang, Rebecca Laird. And next to it, a one-way plane ticket to Buenos Aires. For tomorrow morning. I slept maybe 3 hours that night. The passport felt like a punch in the gut. Rebecca Laird. Buenos Aires. Tomorrow. She'd given herself an alias and a one-way ticket like a surgeon prepping a clean exit. If I let her go, she'd vanish into a new life with my money and the satisfaction of watching me rot. No, not happening. First thing I did was text Evan. It's worse. She's leaving tomorrow. Need air support. Now. He replied with a single word. Come. He said he'd meet me at the newsroom in an hour. Before I left, I called Earl. I need you to come back to the house, I said. Bring everything, tools, camera, screwdrivers. And don't tell anyone. He showed up 20 minutes later, looking like a man who smelled trouble and couldn't avoid it. I paid him cash, and he accepted without questions. I'd learned long ago to keep certain allies close and quiet. At the newsroom, Evan had a look on his face like he'd seen death on the page and liked the angle. He didn't ask for proof right away. Instead, he asked practical things. Names, timelines, keys. I told him everything I knew. Julian's cold smile, the journal, the safe, the forged policy, the passport. I handed him copies of the most damning files I downloaded from the flash drive. Annotated blueprints, the foundation's folder, bank transfers, and a photo of the journal page naming me. He put them in a folder and said nothing for a long time. Then, we can blow this open, but we have to be surgical. Leak the wrong thing and she's gone. Surgical. That suited me. I'd spent 15 years designing structures where every beam had a purpose. Revenge would be the same, calculated, precise, irreversible. Plan A, follow the money. Evan would run a quiet trace on the offshore account and the transfer Julian had shown me. If it routed through shell corporations, he had contacts to subpoena records fast. The second the money's trail showed a solid endpoint, we'd expose it. If it landed in a jurisdiction with slow cooperation, we'd make the trail public and turn the heat up until someone with influence moved. Plan B, lock her in place. I couldn't let her get to an airport. I called a bail bondsman contact Evan knew and asked about putting a fast, anonymous tip into the system. Someone paid to file a complaint about insurance fraud tied to my firm and Rachel's name. Not an arrest, yet, but enough to make a customs hold plausible if a border agency looked. Evan rolled his eyes but didn't refuse. He said, "We play a risk. We create noise without burning the whole case." I liked the balance. Plan C, make her visible. She'd built her life on invisibility. Aliases, shells, a tidy network of people willing to fake a death. If I made her face impossible to hide, if I let federal investigators see her signature on forged documents, if I had Evan's newsroom print the bank transfer trail, if I made Julian nervous enough to talk, she'd have nowhere to run. Earl did the heavy lifting at home. He rewired a motion sensor I'd installed, hiding an extra camera in an attic vent. He found a way to route the feed to a cloud folder only I and Evan could access. I had him plant small trackers in Rachel's car and in 2 handbags I knew she used. I know it sounds paranoid, maybe it was, but paranoia had kept me alive when my world tried to swallow me whole. Julian texted me twice that afternoon, first pretending concern, then anger when I didn't answer. I called him back and sounded like a man who'd just woken from a nightmare. I played on his greed. "You'll get your share," I lied. "But you have to be careful." He asked where I'd found the files and I said softly, "My aunt's old attic. You should be careful too, Jules. People are starting to look." He stilled for a second, and I heard teeth grit over the line. That was enough. Fear works faster than loyalty. By sundown, Evan had confirmed at least one shell company link and a routing through a Caribbean bank. It wasn't enough for an immediate arrest, but it was enough to make a phone ring in the right places. I sat on the porch while Rachel's house light blinked behind thin blinds. Tomorrow she would try to leave. I'd made a plan that used the same tools she used, networks, money, and secrets, but this time they were aimed back at her. I thought about the journal, about Evelyn hiding the truth under insulation, about the way we build and unbuild lives. I thought I was naive. I wasn't. I was patient. Now I had to be faster. We thought we were the hunters. Turns out we were just tripping over someone else's snare. The night before Rachel's flight, I slept like a man with a deadline. The trackers were in place. The cameras were live. Evan had the bank trail and promised he'd hold until I gave him the green light. I felt like a conductor about to bring the orchestra down on a crooked house of cards. I woke to the sound of my phone ringing. "Evan at 5:12 a.m. They moved it up," he said. His voice was clipped. "Something's happened. Don't make any moves. Just stay put." He didn't explain. That alone should have made my skin crawl, but I trusted him. He was the only other person who knew how deep this went. At 6 a.m., there was a loud knock at my front door. 2 men in suits. Not local cops, feds. One flashed a badge before I could stop him. "Mr. Lang, we need to speak with you about the materials found in your home." Their words were calm, professional, but the look in their eyes was a kind you get when the world you thought you understood is quietly collapsing. They asked me to sit in the living room while they searched. Earl stood by the stairs, hands clenched so tight his knuckles blanched. The agents moved through the house with methodical speed, no theatrics, no questions. One of them paused by the attic entrance and looked up at the rafters like a man reading blueprints. When they finished, the lead agent sat down opposite me and folded his hands. "Mr. Lang, we're with the U.S. Attorney's Office. You discovered a cache of materials that are part of a sealed grand jury investigation into organized fraud and identity trafficking. Those files were evidence. They were under federal control. My brain tried to keep up. But the police were." I started. "We're aware of detective calls," he said. "You should know. Several of the deceased you found were involved in witnesses relocated under protective custody. Others are cooperating sources. If their status is compromised, lives are at risk." The words hit like a punch. For the safety of active operations, you can't go to the press. And you can't make those materials public. I opened my mouth and found nothing. So I just sit down? "My wife. She's leaving tomorrow with my money." The sentence tore out of me, ragged. The agent's jaw tightened. "We know. We also know that Ms. Monroe, Rebecca Laird, has been under observation for years. But she's also been playing a complicated game with multiple factions. If you expose her publicly now, it wrecks an operation that could net dozens of arrests. The department has warrants in motion. He tapped a tablet. You've already uploaded backups of some files to the cloud. We'll need full access. Two things happened at once. First, the phone in my pocket lit up with multiple missed calls from Evan. 3 angry voicemails, each one more urgent. Second, my email pinged. A single line from him, no punctuation, no softness. I'm sorry. I can't keep lying. Meet me at the courthouse. Now. I felt the room tilt. Evans? Involved? I asked stupidly. The agent didn't look surprised. Mr. Cortez has been a cooperating source for the U.S. attorney. His reporting has helped generate sealed warrants. He's been balancing journalism with a legal obligation, not to the public, but to an investigation. We kept him in the loop. We couldn't let this go public until we had the big net ready to close. I thought about the newsroom, about the folders Evan and I had stuffed into his bag, about the look on his face when I told him to hold. The betrayal felt like the cold, precise part of surgery, necessary, clinical. You used me, I said. It wasn't a question. We used your discovery carefully, the agent corrected. You endangered that work by moving pieces. We need to know where else you've backed things up. And, Mr. Lang, this is hard to say. You've also created legal exposure for yourself by installing trackers and recording conversations without warrants. The word exposure lodged like glass. I'd been so focused on catching predators I hadn't considered that the law might bite me back. The agent rose. We're going to secure your house and the material. You should contact counsel. Mr. Cortez will be at the courthouse in 15 minutes. Don't leave. They left 2 other agents behind to guard the house. Earl gripped my arm as if he could anchor me to the spot. A minute later, Evan walked up the front path, face pale, eyes hollow like a man who'd pushed someone into a rip current and then watched them fight. He didn't look at me when he said, I didn't want you to get hurt. The courthouse lobby smelled like wet coats and decisions. I followed because there was nowhere else to go. When we sat in a quiet corner, he looked like a man who'd folded himself into something he regretted. Ryan, he said, voice small. They came to me 2 weeks ago, DOJ. They promised indictments if I cooperated. I thought I could control it. I thought I could help you and still keep the case sealed. But they moved faster. They pulled the wire earlier than planned because they had another lead. Someone higher up than Monroe. They needed clearance. I'm sorry. What did you do? I demanded. Did you send the bank trail? Did you? No, he said. I did the only thing they asked. I gave them confirmation you'd been digging. They needed to know the site was active. I didn't want them to hurt you. I swore I'd protect you. His hands trembled. But once they had your house on their radar, they accelerated everything. You're a liability now, Ryan. They say you made the case messy. I think I laughed then. A short, ugly sound. Messy? I asked. We were supposed to be the ones cleaning house. Evan's face crumpled. You didn't understand the scale. She's not a small-time fraudster. She's tied to networks that trade identities and launder cash through places that don't answer to us. If they hit her wrong, dozens of lives, witnesses, relocated victims, could be at risk. I had spent the last week planning a public takedown. Now the feds were telling me the cost of that takedown might be human lives. And the woman who'd plotted to erase me? She might, in the end, be tangled in something so big that pulling one string could set off a war. Outside the courthouse, Julian's name popped on my phone with an unknown number prefix. The next line on Evan's face told me the new truth. Everyone I trusted had a role to play I hadn't seen. And the choice in front of me wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about whether I'd let this spiral into a fire that burned more than just the guilty. Rachel called me that night. I don't even know how she got through. My phone was supposedly being monitored. Her voice was calm, controlled, like she was calling about groceries, not about the wreckage she'd left behind. Ryan, she said softly, I hear you've been busy. Every hair on my neck stood up. They're coming for you, Rachel. You know that, right? The feds, the press, everyone. I know, she said. They always do. That's the point. There was no panic in her voice, just a strange calm. I could hear traffic in the background, maybe an airport terminal. Why? I asked. Why all of this? You could have had anything. Career. A normal life. Why build this entire machine just to destroy people? She let out a quiet laugh. Not cruel, just empty. Because it's the only thing I learned how to do. And then she told me everything. Her father hadn't been some mysterious businessman like she used to say. He was an insurance auditor who moonlighted as a fraud broker. The kind who fixed investigations in exchange for payouts from staged deaths. When he got caught, he didn't go to prison, he flipped. He became an informant. But the people he sold out never forgot. When she was 12, she watched them burn their house down with him inside. Her mother overdosed a month later. The insurance company refused to pay because of pending criminal investigations. Rachel and Julian ended up living with distant relatives who sold the only thing of value left in the house. The father's files. Those files became a manual, a literal guide to how to manipulate the system. She said she rebuilt his operation from scratch, better, smarter. But she didn't start with greed. She started with something worse. Control. When you've watched your whole life collapse over a piece of paper, she said, you start realizing that whoever controls the paperwork controls the truth. That line hit me like a gut punch. Whoever controls the paperwork controls the truth. That was her creed. She didn't want money. She wanted to own reality. She made people disappear because it made her feel godlike, deciding who lived, who died, who existed. You were my final test, she said almost tenderly. I picked you because you were the opposite of my father. You didn't cheat anyone. You built things that lasted. I wanted to see if I could destroy something pure and make the world believe it was an accident. You were going to kill me for an experiment? I asked, my voice cracking. No, she said. I was going to erase you. Death is simple. Erasure is art. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear her breathing through the line, slow, even, the way she always breathed when she was planning something. Then she said the thing that would haunt me forever. I never planned to get caught, Ryan. But if I did, I wanted you to know the truth. I never loved you, but I did admire you. You were the only one who made me hesitate. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. She went on, calm as ever. When they take me in, I'll tell them everything they want to hear. I'll give them names, dates, proof. And when I'm done, I'll walk out again. They'll think I was a victim. They always do. You'll watch me on the news and you'll wonder how I did it. But you'll never really know. Because I already wrote the ending. The line went dead. 5 minutes later, my front door rattled. The agents rushed in, shouting that they had her location. Denver International, Terminal C. A one-way flight, Buenos Aires. Except when they got there, the gate was empty. The passenger manifest showed Rebecca Laird had checked in, but never boarded. They searched the airport for 6 hours. Nothing. She'd vanished again. That was the real reason behind everything. Rachel didn't steal lives for money. She did it to prove she could build and destroy realities better than anyone else. She didn't want wealth. She wanted authorship. And she'd just written herself out of the story. They never found her. Not officially, anyway. The Bureau froze her accounts, seized the properties, and issued warrants in 4 countries. But Rachel Monroe, Rebecca Laird, whoever she decided to be, slipped right through every crack she'd engineered. She'd left the world exactly the way she wanted. Full of questions. For 2 months, I lived inside that silence. My name showed up in news headlines as the surviving husband, the man who'd uncovered one of the largest identity fraud rings in the country. My lawyer told me to stop talking to the press, so I did. Outwardly, I looked like a man rebuilding. Inwardly, I was constructing something else entirely. See, Rachel had taught me one thing. Systems can be rewritten if you understand their bones. Every network, every record, every file has a blueprint. And I was an architect. So I built my revenge the same way I'd build a structure, with foundations that couldn't be traced. I started with the Rebecca Laird passport. The agents had missed a detail on the photo, barely visible reflection of a glass table with a calendar underneath. The date was 2 weeks before she supposedly printed it, which meant there was a physical location, a staging ground where she forged identities. Using Evan's quiet access to DOJ records, he still owed me, and we both knew it. I traced the printer model and serial code to a rental property in Santa Fe, registered to a shell company, Silverline Holdings, the same name that had appeared in one of her old insurance scams. I drove there myself. The place was abandoned, dusty, cold, and stripped bare. But in the corner of the basement, tucked behind drywall, I found a plastic bin filled with her discarded blueprints. Mock insurance forms, burner IDs, handwriting samples, and on top a laptop, locked, but still warm. Inside that laptop was her masterpiece, a file labeled Aftermath. It contained dozens of forged confession letters, each in her style, each tailored to lead investigators down conflicting paths. Europe, South America, Canada. She'd prepared her own mythology. She'd planned to live as the ghost of herself. But she'd made one mistake. She'd connected that machine to a secure cloud under an alias that used my firm's name. When the agents had warned me I'd be legally exposed, they'd been right. Rachel had pre-written digital evidence to make me look complicit if things went wrong. She planned to erase me both physically and legally, make me the villain she left behind. So I did what any survivor would. I turned her art against her. With Evan's help, I anonymously uploaded the contents of that laptop to the DOJ leak server. Every confession, every forged alias, every blueprint. But before I sent it, I edited the metadata. I replaced every digital fingerprint, every traceable IP with hers. Every forged identity looped back to Rebecca Laird. She wanted control over truth, so I gave it to her, permanently. Within days, international alerts tagged her under half a dozen identities she'd created. Bank systems locked her out. Border databases flagged her. She'd built her own maze and I sealed every exit. No one knew I'd done it. Not Evan. Not the feds. But somewhere out there, Rachel did. And she'd know it wasn't the government that boxed her in. It was me. A month later, I got an email from an unknown sender. No text, just a photo. A cracked mirror. A reflection of a woman's hand holding a lighter over a passport. The name on it, Rebecca Laird. No face. No location. Just a single sentence in the email subject line. You built well. That was the last I ever heard from her. The feds closed the case that winter. I sold the house, dissolved my firm, and moved to Seattle. Started a new design practice under a different name. Smaller, simpler, quiet. Sometimes, when I look at blueprints now, I think about her philosophy, that whoever controls the paperwork controls the truth. She wasn't wrong. She just forgot something important. The truth always has a witness. I was hers. And when she tried to erase me, I rebuilt myself from the wreckage. That's the funny thing about architects, we always leave a foundation, even after demolition. So yeah, she wrote the ending. I just rewrote it better.